Well, I sometimes think that what the coronavirus has done is that it's pulled back the curtains. It's taken off the comfort blanket so that we can see and feel just how vulnerable that we actually are. And let's be honest, a reasonable response to that is at times to be worried, to be afraid, to be scared. We face all kinds of fears, from fears over our physical health, our mental health, our financial health. Our fears might be focused on others and their health, or maybe their education, or their job, or their future. We might be worried or afraid about what it would be like to spend so much time in a house together. We might be afraid of the judgment that other people might make about us, whether we wear a mask or whether we don't wear a mask. Or we might be afraid actually that things are coming out of lockdown a little bit too quickly, and you think we should be going more cautiously. And when we face those fears, our tendency is to try and control our environment, to make them go away. Just think about how when people heard that there might be food shortages, they went out and panic bought lots of flour and pasta as well. The problem is that doesn't work. We can't really stock up on enough pasta to last a lifetime. And when we try and control our environment, often it slips out of our hands like a bar of soap. But let me try and help with one Bible verse which I've found quite helpful in these things. It says, "Humble yourself, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast your anxiety on him, because he cares for you." Our tendency might be to focus on the second half of that and say, well, cast your anxieties on him because he cares for you. And that is important, but I think that actually the first part of it is perhaps even more important. It says, "Humble yourself, therefore, under God's mighty hand." See, if we don't do that, we're going to go around trying to control our environment and fix our problems with our own hands. When I was a child, I'd sometimes be playing marbles, and they'd roll underneath the sofa. And being the proud child that I was, I'd try and get them out myself. I wasn't humble enough to go and ask for help. The problem with that was that my hands weren't strong enough. I couldn't lift up the sofa, and usually I ended up with my arm stuck and twisted underneath it. Had I humbled myself and gone to my parents for help, they would have helped me. They would have solved the problem. The first step then in getting help is to realise that we can't deal with it on our own, and that we do need help. Humbling ourselves is the first important step. But it's important who we turn to for that help as well. It said, "Humble yourself under God's mighty hand." It'd be no good going to God if he couldn't do anything about it. But it describes God as having a mighty hand. And when it does that, it's picking up on a phrase that's used in the first part of the Bible, in the Old Testament, where it says that God rescued his people with an outstretched arm and a mighty hand. God has rescued his people before, and it's asking us to look back and think about how God was able to help them in that. Maybe if you know some of the Bible stories, you can spot that for yourself. But there's another encouragement as well, and that comes right at the end of it, where it says, "Cast your anxiety on him, because he cares for you." Would be no good, would it, going to a God who was able but wasn't willing to help? The good news is that God is willing to help. He's able to help us out with all of our problems. He even sends his own Son to deal with our biggest problem for us. God cares for us in all of our worries, in all of our fears, in all of our anxieties as well. And one of the things that God might be doing through the coronavirus is just nudging us to come back to him, taking away that comfort blanket, not so that we'll be afraid, but so that we'll come back to Him. One of the things when I was young was actually when I did go to my dad for help. He really enjoyed it. He really appreciated it because it built up that relationship between a father and a son. So what do we do then when we see that headline and we're afraid? The first step has to be to humble ourselves. Recognise that we can't deal with it with our own hands, whatever strategy that might be for you, trying to control your environment, trying to ignore it or avoid it or distract ourselves with perhaps Netflix or alcohol. That's not the way to deal with it. Secondly, we have to come to God and recognise that He is able to do something about it. He has a mighty hand and is able, and He's willing to help us as well. Cast your anxiety on Him because He cares for you.